Ideology always paves the way toward atrocity. Well, ideals and ideology are not quite the same thing. Ideals are simple and don't knit themselves into vast intellectual structures. In other words, an ideal of mine is to do as little harm as possible. I may not meet this ideal, but it is an ideal of mine to try and to do as good a job as I can. But in the name of that ideal, it doesn't lead on. There isn't a therefore. Therefore what? Therefore I should become a Mormon. Therefore I should no longer eat meat. Therefore I should no longer have sex. Therefore, no, there isn't that kind of implication. But ideology always implies implication. If man is, as Marxists say, an economic creature, then the following must follow, and the following must follow from that. So I think ideals are very close to our emotions. They're things that spring from the heart, and their boundaries are not well defined, and the implications are not clear. I mean, if I say my ideal is to do good for mankind, the next step is not at all clear. But if I profess an ideology, the next step is always deceptively clear. So I think ideologies flatten complexity. You know, people don't like paradox. I'm not sure why this is. I think it's a quality of print culture. People want closure. They want every program or every intellectual argument or every examination of a phenomena to end with a conclusion. QED. Therefore, this is what it is. But you don't have to be a rocket scientist to notice that this betrays the complexity of the world. The world is never one thing or even several things. The world always has dimensions which exceed the descriptive machinery that you're applying to it. And I don't know who it was, George Bernard Shaw or Nietzsche or some other 19th century bad boy, but it has been said that the essence of intellectual maturity is being able to simultaneously hold two contradictory thoughts in your mind at the same time. Now you are actually approaching the beginning of intellectual maturity. But if you're always saying, well, if it's this, then it can't be that, and if it's this, it can't be that, then you have been hoisted on the petard of dualism. And it's more than a joke to say that dualism is the root of all evil. Of course it is. It's the root of all good. And what really we are given is a seamless continuum of phenomena that we are asked to not to understand. That's preposterous. Why should talking monkeys understand reality? But to feel. We can feel. We have an extremely complex body and nervous system and perceptual apparatus which ushers us into feeling. So you have not mastered a situation when you understand it. When you understand the situation, you are probably on the road to catastrophe. When you feel the situation, you are probably moving into a good position then to act in that situation. And often usually we do not understand our feelings. That's a strange thing to ask of one's feelings. If we understand our feelings, it's simply a footnote on our intellectual housekeeping. It is neither necessary nor sufficient. What is necessary and what is sufficient is feeling into the moment. I think this is where we got to at some point earlier in this, that the felt presence of immediate experience is the defining phenomenon of being. If you can't reach it, you are in trouble. You need some kind of help, psychedelics, therapy, loving kindness, something. And if you can reach it, then you have contacted the authentic domain of being. I almost said of humanness, but it goes deeper than that, because the animal world is living in that space. Well, I think because of the good offices of quantum physics and some other things, we are beginning to realize that things like chaos, like paradox, these are not names for intellectual black holes. These are names for the sources of life's richness and its creative advance lies in these things. Reducing, as we have done over the past 200 years, the universe to a machine, some kind of a machine, then robs it of meaning. And then we stand back and look at our lives and our societies and say, how come they have no meaning? It's because we labored like demons to make sure that they didn't have meaning, and now we have no one to blame but ourselves for the gross simplification of reality and the betrayal of experience that we achieved in that process. Yeah. You know, years ago in Canada, there was a political party called the Social Credit Party, and they had a very complex scheme that nobody could understand. And they ran on the platform under the motto, you don't have to understand social credit in order to vote for it. So this is sort of what you're talking about.
Great things with house, that's
why not?
Why not? Yes. Feelings are primary. The primary datum of experience is feeling. And then out of that comes a logical reframing of experience. And then still lower on the rung, and I maintain low enough on the rung that one shouldn't go that low, is an ideological recasting of experience. And it's a delicate thing. I'm not offering a simple answer here. It requires constant fine-tuning and intelligence. And to look at, and every day I think we have to, it's almost like we need, what is it that the Marxists used to do? Criticism, self-criticism. We need to be alert to ideology. It's constantly seducing us. Yeah, dialectic. But the idea of criticism, self-criticism, that you and your colleagues or comrades constantly search your behavior for betrayal of the ideology. I think we need to constantly search ourselves, not for the betrayal of ideology, but for the embracing of it. And say, oh dear, I'm starting to believe something. Slap, slap. That feels better. Because these ideologies are incredibly draining and distracting. They get in the way between us and true feeling. On the other hand, if you don't apply logical razors to experience, then feeling is open to all kinds of interpretations that become somehow themselves springboards to ideology. I think it's really important to try to keep things as simple as possible, because they will still be hellaciously complex if you are true to experience. the simplest explanation of what is going on here is still maddeningly Baroque. So throwing on flying saucers and papal plotting and the plans of great Atlantis only further exacerbate the problem. If you just deal with the given of the fact of your history and your destiny, things are quite complex enough. And of course, again, what the psychedelics do is provide a reference point in organism. It's like a reset button. It says beyond ideology, beyond cultural programming, beyond language, beyond hope, beyond fear, beyond expectation, there is the raw datum of experience. Here, have a dose. Didn't work? Have a bigger dose. And if we keep returning to the raw datum of experience, then these other things, they will recrystallize around us, but not with the imprisoning intensity that they have for straight people. We know that behind all this constipated social stability lies the chaos of the psychedelic experience. It's important to keep it in mind in very unpsychedelic situations. But people who have never broken through the cultural dream take it to be reality and commit crimes based on delusions about what is and isn't reality. Well, not to speak of whales and dolphins specifically, but nature as a dynamic field of activity beyond the reach of politicians, image makers, and so forth and so on. Nature is the constant psychedelic companion of the human experience. I think, we know this. That's why we crowd into cities and build walls and keep nature at bay. If you go into nature alone and don't eat much and don't speak much, within 72 hours, the hills speak and the winds confer with you, and you are conveyed into an animate, caring, living, natural dynamic. But it's threatening to the ego. This is the first time in 2 hours I've used this word. But the ego is a maladaptive, tumor-like growth in the personality that has been inculcated into you by the toxicity of culture. It is literally the response to toxic culture is the growth of ego. The more toxic the culture, the more the ego is revered as a natural value within that culture. So responding to dolphins and whales and anthills and termite swarms and these kinds of things is an opening to the natural dynamic that's all around us. Many people never observe nature except when psychedelics force it upon them. But this is I think if you feel afraid of psychedelics, but you want the juice that you may sense there, take up wilderness camping and do it assiduously. And though it's a slower process and you may not have specifically colored hallucinations, the conclusions that you will emerge with are essentially the same as the psychedelic voyager emerges from. And nature is deep, ordered, dynamical, and caring for the project of being. And so should we be. And the order that we seek is the natural order of our bodies and our minds in interface with the world, not the unnatural order of ideology, commodification, propaganda, and a misuse of communication.